This conference will now be recorded.
So, in today's class, we will focus on developing OData service using getEntitySet method with filter options. I mean to say select options as filter. Developing OData web service using getEntitySet method with select options as filter. So in this situation, under getEntitySet method, we need to use two important parameters. One is IT filter select options and ET entity set. So these two parameters are important when you are dealing with select options as filter input to getEntitySet method. One is IT filter select options and ET entity set here. IT filter select options, this will accept input filter as select options. It will accept input filter as select option from front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori. IT filter select options, so it will accept input as select options. And ET entity set, this will send output records to the front-end application, SAP UI5 or Fiori. So these two are important when you're dealing with getEntitySet method along with select options as input filter. So very commonly used, and there are many techniques of using it. In today's class, I'll explain one of the technique by using IT filter select options in the most shortcut manner, and for sending the output, we'll go with ET entity set. So let me write the step-by-step procedure. For this, I'll try to create one separate project. If you want, you can add this functionality in your previous project. If you want, you can add this functionality in previous project, but I want to make it separate. In SCGW, step 2, we will try to create an entity type and entity set with ABAP structure. For example, VBAK, I want to use this table. I want to import the fields from VBAK table for creating entity type and entity set. So let me do this. So directly let me go to SCGW. So if you want, you can create this functionality in the existing project, or you can add a separate project here by creating that. select options OData project. Now under data model, we will try to create entity type entity set with ABAP structure VBAK. So you are already aware of this. You can right click import from DDIC structure and you can provide entity type, for example VBAK, and you can also provide something like ABAP structure VBAK, and you can create an entity set by selecting checkbox. So entity type name and your ABAP structure can be same. You need not worry about this. It can be same. The name of the entity type and the name of the ABAP structure, in this case I am trying to make it same. So you can click on next here now. So it will load all the fields in this case, but try to select the required fields. I want to select VBELN, ERDAT, ERZDT, ERNAM, and something like NETWR, VKORG, and WAERK, something like that. So I've selected some of the fields in this case. You can see that. And now you can click on next. And here, as I told you, at least one field must be key field when you create any entity type. So I'm selecting VBLN as a key field. You can just click on finish. Now you can see entity type with the required fields which we have imported here, and VBLN is a key field, and VBAK SCT is the entity set which is associated with VBAK as entity type. So this is what you need to do. Step 2. Now step 3 is you need to generate runtime artifacts. Generate runtime artifacts, that means it will generate all the required classes. You're already aware of this, so let me select the project and click on red color symbol. So it will create all the classes for this project. MPC, DPC, MPC extension, DPC extension. As usual, these classes will be generated. Metadata will be assigned in that according to data model. It will update the metadata inside MPC class, and it will generate several other methods which we have already discussed. So now you can see runtime artifacts. So all these things are generated here. Now what we'll do is step 4. Try to open data provider extension class. DPC ext class. Click on change. Then you can place cursor under VBAK get entity set method. You can place cursor under get entity set method, which is created on VBAK entity set here. So for every entity set, as I told you, there will be get entity set method. You can go inside this method and write the functionality by redefining it. Place cursor in that method and click on redefine. Now implement below code So let me write the code and then save and activate. So you can go to DPC extension, double click that DPC extension class, and here you'll get all the list of methods. Now I want to fetch the data based on input filter select options. So you can write the code in get entity set method to fetch the data based on input filter select options. So click on change, place cursor and redefine that method. So here you can see there are two important options to deal with select options. You can see IT filter select options and ET entity set. So these two things we will try to use it in today's session in the most simplest manner. So you can make this complex by adding some conditions, by using looping, by using virtual fields. You can do whatever you want, but ultimately, when you're dealing with select options, input has to be accepted from IT filter select options. Output has to be transferred using ET entity set. So this will be acting as input with select options, and ET entity set will try to use it as output, and here we'll implement the code. So just remember this: input via IT filter select options, output via ET entity set. And you can write whichever code you want in this section. Right, so now you can see there are many ways of using IT filter select options. I'll try to make it as a most simplest manner. So first of all, what you can do is you can get the data. You can get data from your table into some corresponding fields of table, and our output is ET entity set. So directly you can send the records to ET entity set here. From database table through select query, you can bring the data to the standard parameter, which is also an internal table in this case, that is ET entity set. And what we can do is we can use one special method if you want to send the output via filter select options. There is a special method to deal with output data so that output will be transferred based on select options as input criteria. So to do that, you can use call method IWBEP, and there is a class CLMGW, and data util. Let me select. You can see /IWBEP/CLMGW data utility. So we call this as utility class. You can use this utility class in order to send the output to the front end based on input filter select options. CLMGW data util, in that there is one method, that is filtering is one of the method here. Paging, order by, filtering. So these are three important methods. We'll try to use it in different sessions, but in today's class we'll use filtering method here. And for this method you need to use exporting IT select options equal to the input whichever is coming from front end. And you can modify the final internal table by changing something like CT data equal to something like output internal table in this case. So this is the most simplest way of sending the data to the front end based on select options as input criteria. So the input in this case will be based on select options. Select options input in this case. So pass select options input from whichever is coming from front end and send the output by modifying this output internal table. So what we need to do is, here you can use these parameters. IT filter select options automatically captures the input from the front end. So why don't you pass that here? IT filter select options. It automatically holds the value whichever is coming in the form of filter select options. So pass that here. And the output has to be transferred accordingly by using ET entity set, which is the output parameter for this method. So this is input, and in this case ET entity set is the output. IT filter select options in this case is an input, ET entity set is an output, and this filtering is a method, that's a standard method. You can use it for this type of requirements if your input is through select options. So, but how this will work? Let me highlight that. So let me activate. If you want, you can add this functionality to your yesterday's service also. In yesterday's session, we have created get entity set method on user set. In that also you can use this particular technique. The data whichever you want to send it finally, that final data you can modify and send it to the front end through ET entity set here. Right, so this is a simple code I've written here. Now if you want, you can apply conditions, you can apply if-else clause, and then you can finally send the output to the front end. But this is the simplest way. Step 5. Now you need to open service maintenance, then register the service. It is a new service. Step 6. Open gateway client and test the service. So before testing, let me highlight some of these things here. Let me write a note. So this is a standard class with filtering method. This class can be used for filtering wise with select options and order by, something like ascending, descending. You can use that order by, and not only that, there is one more option you can see. Paging. So there is one more option, filtering, order by and paging. There are 3 options overall here. You can see that under the same class. Order by is for ascending, descending. You can send the data through sorting order. And paging is also one of the option. You can send dynamic paging on a feed when you send the output to the front end. But here technically paging is also one of the method. So we have used filtering. In the coming days, whenever necessary, we'll use other options. But filtering is a method inside the same class CLMGW data util, which is used for accepting input through select options so that the output can be transferred accordingly. So filtering method can be used to send output records to the front end app as per input filter select options. Just remember that simple note. Filtering is a static method internally. You can use it to send output records to the front end as per input filter select options. So this is one thing that you need to notice. But how this will work? What are the other possibilities? So let us discuss that as well. So this is a method, get entity set. We have written the code inside that. And this is part of our OData ABAP service. But with respect to front end, the input and output has to be managed. So technically this is how it looks like. There can be an input form in the front end with something like enter VBELN, something like this, with low value. You can make it like from and to, something like this. In the front end also we can have a low value, high value as input so that the input will come to the OData service in the form of select options. And here you can have a search button or get data button, whatever. And you can have output. In this case, output can be, once again, it can be table or a list or a microchart, or you can use chart, multi-combo box. We can use different screen elements here. It all depends. It can be table, list, microchart, multi-combo box, etc. for showing the output to the end user. So input, button, and for output there can be a table. But we can use other screen elements, not just table. So here, this is how the front-end app SAP UI5 or Fiori application can be developed. But if you closely observe, in this case, what we are trying to do is, initially we are getting data from database table to an entity set directly. What we are trying to do, we are trying to get data from database table to an internal table, which is nothing but an ET entity set here. So, if needed, what you do is you try to use ITAB in this case. If you want, you can use one temporary internal table ITAB. Okay? And what you can do is you can apply looping. Loop at ITAB into work area. You can apply all your conditions. And finally, you need to append your work area to ET entity set. You can apply all these conditions, whichever we have used yesterday, by making use of a local internal table ITAB instead of directly sending the data to ET entity set from database table. But finally, you need to apply this particular technique to send the output based on input filter select options. So instead of using conditions, instead of using local internal table, I've directly got the data from database table to ET entity set, and we are modifying the data here through select options as an input here. So in simple words, you can just think like this: input through this and output by using ET entity set. But you have a freedom to modify this code. You have a freedom to apply the conditions, validations, etc., etc. You can use one temporary local internal table. You can apply conditions through looping, etc., which we have done yesterday. But finally, try to use this method from CLMGW data util class. So let me highlight this. Filtering is a method that should be used. And these are the two important parameters which are directly used in this method. So this will tell you the data flow and implementation part. Right, so how to test this? If you want to test it, you need to follow certain syntax in the URL. So that is also important. So go back, make sure it is activated. Now you can go back. So according to procedure, let us register the service. This is a new service. Just click on register and then continue. Now open gateway client and test the service. So let me open gateway client, and here you can see if you want to get metadata, then you can use URI option, You can use dollar metadata in this case and execute the service. Then you will get the metadata of that particular service. What are the fields which you have imported? You can see that everything here along with the data type and length. You can see that. So not only that, which field is a key field, so that is also available in metadata. And what is the entity type name, so that is visible here. And what is the entity set of this service, that is visible here. And what is the complete service URL of this project, that is available here. So that is common for every service. You can use dollar metadata to get the information of that service. But now what I want to do is, I want to select entity set here. That is VPAK set. And I want to use question mark dollar filter equal to. So you can use VPELN, something like greater than or equal, something like you can pass some low value, and you can use VPELN less than or equal, something like you can pass high value here. So low value, let me pass it as 49, something like 67, and high value, let me pass it as 4999. So when you want to pass input in the form of select options through service URL, then this is the syntax you have to follow strictly. After entity set, use filter keyword, VPELN, that is select option field, operator, low value, and you can use and, again field name, operator, then the high value. So this is a syntax you have to follow strictly when you are testing OData service through gateway client. So now you can execute the service. If everything goes fine, then you'll be able to get the output. Let me try. Now you can see we are able to get the output with 200 status code. That's the success status code. Now these are the records in between that particular range. So you can see 4969 data and 4970, and you can see 4971, and here the values will be up to something like 4999. So that is a high value. So up to that we are able to get that records. So if you want to change the criteria, you can change the criteria here. 5000, something like 5009, something like that. Let me try whether there are any records with this criteria. So you can see there are few records with VPELN 5000, 5001. So you're getting those records within that criteria. With low value, high value will be 5009 in this case for VPELN. So based on this low value, high value, we are able to retrieve those records accordingly and successfully with HTTP response code as 200. You can notice that here. So let me copy this. Let me take this screenshot. While testing, use entity set. So you need to be very clear about these testing URLs and the syntaxes. Provide entity set name and then use filter keyword here. So filter is a keyword. You can commonly use it for any type of service. And then this is how you can pass low value, high value to the OData service, which is technically like your input and then finally you can expect your output under HTTP response section, and the status code is 200. That means that indicates it's a successful execution of this service. And here also we are using get option to execute the service, because get entity set can be executed only through get option. So that is how you can use this syntax for testing purpose. Right, so let me copy those sample URLs. You can try this. Select entity sets in gateway client. In our case, VPAK SET. Select get option and execute the service with below service URLs. Something like this. You can try in this manner. And observe the output, whether the records are retrieved with this range or not. That you need to observe through XML format by default in gateway client. Now, I want to make you understand how exactly the things are happening in the background just by explaining through debugging technique. So I want to debug this particular simple OData service. So what you can do is you can just open DPC extension class and open VPAK SET. Based on that, there is get entity set method. You can open that method and set external breakpoint here. Set external breakpoint and then open gateway client and test the service with get option. I mean to say execute the service by providing some input. So you can see now DPC extension class. Let me go to this. So our code is implemented somewhere here. And let me just put a breakpoint, external breakpoint, to understand what exactly is happening under IT filter select options and ET entity set. So you can just set an external breakpoint. Now you can open gateway client and you can pass your input here. Let me use 4967 as input and 4999 as high value input. Now I am executing the service. If everything goes fine, it will open ABAP debugger. You can see that here. So before executing get entity set method, you can see internally several methods are executed here. So you can see that before executing our VPAK set, getEntitySet method, it is executing internally several methods like RFC start, something like handle request, process request, getEntitySet, and finally our method which we have implemented that is getting executed here. So you can notice that. Now what you can do, you can press something like F5 and I want to check what exactly is happening inside this. So internally you can see again filtering method is executed here. CLMGW data util. Under CLMGW data util you can see we have used filtering as a method, but before executing that you can see, let me go for completion, and then now you can go to this table section. Under table section let us verify IT filter select options. So when you select that IT filter select options in ABAP debugger screen, you are getting the property field name as VBLN, but you can see select options, it is taken as internal table. What you do is just double click this. When you double click, then you'll get the complete input which you have provided. Something like option is BT, between, and this is a low value and this is the high value. Between is the operator used by default, and you can see 4969 is our low value, 4999 is a high value. So that input will reach IT filter select option automatically based on the service URL which you are using, and that you can trace out through ABAP debugger. Whatever input you pass through gateway client or the front-end app, that will reach in this manner. You can notice that here. Between, because we are using AND, so it will take BT, between. So that you can trace it as part of table section. Under table section you can use IT filter select options, that is our standard input parameter which we are trying to trace out. Now I want to check the data which is coming to etEntitySet now. You can select etEntitySet here under table section, because this is also internally an internal table. Press enter. Now you can see this is the output data within that range. So there are some records here within that range, 4967 to 4999. You can see that. First record 4969, that's a low value, and the last record 4999, that's a high value. So we are able to get 30 records within that range, and that you can trace out in etEntitySet here. So let me just copy this. EtEntitySet, you can also trace out this under table section through ABAP debugger screen. You can expect the output here. Using ABAP debugger, you can trace out all these things. Now, if you want to complete the execution, you can press F6 here for line by line execution, and you can trace out values under IT filter select options. IT filter select options under table section. You can trace out directly from that, and you can trace out output under ET entity set. This also you can trace out under table section under debugger screen. First one is input, the second one is output. And you can press F8 to complete the execution. Now you can observe the same output. You have to observe the same output under gateway client. But here, while executing the service, while debugging also, what you do is try to copy this URL. Try to use that URL and then execute the service. It opens ABAP debugger and you can press F6 for line by line execution, trace out the values, and you can also come out through F8. So in my case, let me press F8 to complete the execution, and you can see the control is shifted back to SAP Gateway Client. The same data is visible here. Same data is visible, but by default in XML format. So while debugging, you can also remember this. Pass the URL in this manner with filter keyword with low value, high value on VPLN. And then try to complete this process. Then you can get some more clarity about those standard parameters. Okay, I'll stop here. It's a simple session, but I'll stop here. In the next class, we'll discuss some more interesting methods and interesting options.